When the convergence of absolute authority intertwines with personal obsession, a captivating narrative unfolds. For over a millennium, the British royal family has wielded power publicly, yet often found themselves ensnared in intricate private intrigues. The history of this lineage is one filled with lovers, deceivers, and iconic figures, all bound by a singular force, scandals that refuse to fade into obscurity. This is not mere gossip. Rather, it is a candid exploration of history bereft of pretense. Tonight, we seek to peel back the layers of the royal facade to reveal the hidden truths that lie within. Join us as we examine the lives of 33 British royals known for their notorious sexual reputations. As we delve deeper into this narrative of royal indiscretion, I encourage you to subscribe for more. This journey promises to uncover ever more unsettling revelations. While you engage with this quest for knowledge, I invite you to share in the comments where you are viewing from and the precise hour, whether it be the stillness of midnight, the brightness of noon, or a moment in between. Let's connect over this shared curiosity. King Charles II, often referred to as the Merry Monarch, earned this moniker not through a penchant for humor, but rather because his court was reminiscent of an unending aristocratic revelry. His reign, marked by indulgence, saw him often depicted with a goblet in one hand and a mistress in the other, mistresses who were no mere scandalous whispers, but public figures, effectively supported by the state as though they were monuments of national pride. Over the course of his life, he acknowledged at least a dozen illegitimate offspring, a figure that seems almost measured against the backdrop of his hedonistic lifestyle. Charles's romantic endeavors, which included notable figures like Barbara Villiers, Nell Gwyn, and Louise de Keroualle, anointed his reign with a tabloid-esque flair that was hardly veiled. While Parliament, with its powdered wigs, lectured him on propriety, and clergy made attempts to admonish him towards moral rectitude, Charles responded with a dismissive mirth. His laughter resonated with the authority of a ruler who had once disbanded Parliament, a reminder of his power that could be easily asserted again. Upon his death, his brother James ascended the throne, taking with him the remnants of Charles's more dubious tendencies, thus continuing the legacy of indulgence and instability that characterized his reign. King Edward III, known as Albert Edward, presents a fascinating figure in the annals of British monarchy, often recognized for his duality as both a playboy prince and a public figure. Long before he ascended the throne, his reputation as Bertie overshadowed his royal status, characterized by a seemingly insatiable appetite for pleasure that prompted French artisans to design a chair equipped with stirrups, ostensibly to facilitate his extramarital escapades more comfortably. His marriage to Alexandra of Denmark appeared to be one of convenience, fulfilling public and ceremonial needs while he traversed the realms of Parisian courtesans, London actresses, and members of high society with a relentless fervor. The impropriety of his relationship with Lady Daisy Graravelle was so flagrant that it almost attained an official acceptance, as taverns and brothels murmured his name, elevating him to the status of a modern legend. Edward's life was punctuated by multiple scandals, entanglements in divorce proceedings, yet he managed to transform into a beloved monarch by simply outliving potential critics. While many attribute the modernization of the monarchy to Edward, one could argue that he merely adorned it with a velvet smoking jacket, instructing it to adopt a more relaxed demeanor. As the monarchy transitioned from Edward to his son, however, the complexities of royal legacy began to unravel, framing the institution more as a lavish masquerade than a beacon of moral integrity. If you find yourself intrigued by tales of historical deviation from decorum, join in as we navigate through an additional 31 scandals. Your engagement is welcome. Share where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Are you immersed in the midnight study or enjoying a leisurely afternoon exploration? Let's juxtapose our experiences amidst the expanding tapestry of history. 3. King George IV, Prince Regent. Envision a figure so steeped in controversy that he was excluded from attending his own father's funeral. This was George IV. His tumultuous path began early with a clandestine marriage to a Catholic widow, Maria Fitzherbert, a union that was both illicit and a source of considerable embarrassment. In a move dictated by political expediency, he later wed Caroline of Brunswick, only to loathe her from the outset, subsequently dedicating the remainder of their lives to her vilification. His romantic entanglements were not mere affairs. They unfolded as grand, calamitous dramas with ongoing repercussions in the courts. Various mistresses graced his life intermittently, each with accompanying legal battles that captured public attention, much to the delight of the press. Notably, he faced a lawsuit for criminal conversation, a Victorian euphemism for adultery, indicating his frequent indiscretions. A man of excessive habits, George indulged in drink with reckless abandon, gambled as if the treasury were his personal bank, and had himself immortalized in portraits reminiscent of classical deities. While his reputation for libertinism might suggest a life of unconventional pursuits, it often resembled an unintentional generator of scandal. Yet, even his extraordinary tumult would soon be overshadowed by the reign of his sibling, James. James II's reign epitomizes the complexities of governance in a deeply divided nation, as he navigated the turbulent waters of a largely Protestant England as a practicing Catholic. His religious identity alone placed him at odds with the prevailing sentiments of the realm. However, the profound controversies of his rule stemmed not solely from his faith but significantly from his penchant for scandalous liaisons, marked by a remarkable ability to choose mistresses who were universally unappealing to his subjects. These affairs, which often played out in public view, produced a pattern of political upheaval. His numerous illicit children, born before breakfast, were soon followed by fresh controversies by lunchtime. The ramifications of his personal life extended far beyond mere gossip. They intersected crucially with the political landscape. Every romantic entanglement became a catalyst for tension, igniting fierce reactions in Parliament, akin to igniting a fuse on a powder keg. Even his second marriage to Mary of Modena did little to temper his reputation. Instead, her subsequent pregnancies only intensified public anxiety. Was the royal lineage becoming a potential harbinger of political instability? James II's excesses throughout his reign fueled distrust toward his administration, culminating in a crisis that ultimately led to his abdication. His departure from the throne was not merely a consequence of military defeat. It signified an intolerable accumulation of scandals that even his stanchest supporters could no longer endure. The successor to his troubled rule would, ironically, not present a paragon of virtue either, suggesting that the entwined narratives of personal conduct and political consequence would continue to shape the monarchy's legacy. The reign of King Henry VIII represents a tumultuous chapter in English history, defined not only by his notorious 6 marriages but by the profound implications of his decisions on the socio-political landscape of the time. Beyond the mere scandal of marital discord, Henry's legacy is marked by responsibility for 2 high-profile executions, the turbulence of a religious reformation, and a nation that aged visibly under the weight of his reign. His approach to love and governance was not merely unconventional. It was characterized by an unyielding force that dismantled traditional norms with the fervor of a tempest. The court of Henry VIII served as a stage for endless ambition, flirtations, and the spectre of sudden demise. The captivating Anne Boleyn, with her cleverness and charm, found herself on the sharp end of the king's expectations. Her failure to bear him a male heir led to her tragic execution. In contrast, Catherine Howard, youthful and naive, embodied the fatal consequences of entering a realm rife with peril once she fell under the king's gaze. Even during periods when Henry appeared to adhere to monogamous ideals, the backdrop was obscured by implicit affairs and the relentless whisper of intrigue that permeated the court. Women who entered Henry's sphere were not merely companions. They became symbols of political machination, frequently contested influences in a relentless game of power. By the twilight of his life, Henry had transcended his flesh and blood existence, emerging as a larger-than-life figure enshrouded in myths of romantic catastrophe and ruin. However, the legacy left by his son, Edward, was ephemeral, as the crown soon passed to a successor who would engage with fewer matrimonial entanglements, yet equally navigate a landscape of political suspicion and trepidation. King Charles I represents a fascinating case study of contrasts within the tapestry of English monarchy, a figure whose personality was marked by both reticence and an unmistakable pride. His reign, ultimately culminating in his execution, was clouded not solely by the burdens of governance or fiscal strife but also by scrutinized personal relationships. The most notable of these was his connection with George Villiers, the Duke of Buckingham, a friendship that transcended conventional boundaries and raised eyebrows among the courtly elite. Their correspondence bore the hallmarks of deep affection, resembling poetic exchanges that blended warmth with fervor, leading many to speculate on the true nature of their bond. Despite his marriage to Henrietta Maria and their production of numerous heirs, the tantalizing whispers of impropriety lingered, suggesting that the king's devotion to Buckingham could possess layers beyond mere political allegiance or camaraderie. Although such inquiries were often left unspoken in polite society, the very act of considering them invoked a profound unease. In a nation teetering on the edge of disintegration, few notions provoked greater public agitation than the idea of a monarch whose emotional investments might be construed as inappropriate, further complicating his legacy and the historical narrative surrounding his turbulent rule. The narrative surrounding Mary, Queen of Scots, remains a subject of fervent debate, oscillating between the portrayal of a romantic idealist and a savvy political survivor, perhaps embodying elements of both. Gifted with beauty, youth, and authority, she was a figure of irresistible allure for men, yet a source of irritation for political rivals. Her union with Lord Darnley initially bore the hallmarks of romantic love, but it tragically descended into a tale steeped in murder. Following this, her alliance with Bothwell has been interpreted through contrasting lenses. Some historians suggest passionate choice, while others insist on coercive circumstances. Regardless, her adversaries seized upon this marriage to weave a narrative steeped in accusations of adultery, conspiracy, hedonism, and, perhaps most threateningly to the era, female autonomy. Mary's demise transcended mere political failure. It spiraled into a profound reputational crisis. Her depiction as a scandalous sovereign has haunted Protestant perspectives for generations, evolving into a notion that a queen's intimacy was never fully her own. This complex legacy continues to resonate, raising questions about the intersection of power, gender, and personal agency in a tumultuous historical context. Queen Anne stands as a fascinating figure whose legacy is often viewed through the prism of her intimate relationships with women, a lens that invites both scrutiny and intrigue. Had she engaged with men in a traditional romantic sense, history might have cast her as a tragic monarch, but her genuine affection for women, characterized by profound emotional and intimate connections, shifted that narrative dramatically. This bond, particularly with Sarah Churchill, was so profound and consuming that it had the potential to disrupt the very fabric of government. Their correspondence revealed layers of yearning, jealousy, and sorrow, bubbling beneath the surface of political stability. When this relationship deteriorated, and subsequent companionship with Abigail Masham ignited yet another political crisis. The nature of her relationships, whether romantic, emotional, or politically influenced, remains a matter of debate. Critics frequently portrayed her as a queen whose decisions were tainted by desire, while supporters painted her grief and isolation as the driving forces behind her choices. Regardless of perspective, Anne's reign was marked by a singular and striking drama, wherein her most perilous entanglements were not with military commanders or foreign dignitaries, but with women adept at navigating the intricacies of her affections. It was not the sexual nature of these connections that stirred scandal, but rather the unsettling notion that love, in all its complexity, could defy regulation and governance. Queen Elizabeth I, often labelled as the Virgin Queen, presents an intriguing paradox when scrutinized through the lens of her historical reputation. Contrary to the moniker that encapsulated her public image, Elizabeth's personal life was marked by a tapestry of romantic intrigue, subtle courtship, and clandestine relationships that belied her declared commitment to remain unmarried. Her court, a vibrant stage for unspoken sentiments and rumor-laden exchanges, pulsated with the energy of her deep connection to Robert Dudley, a childhood companion whose proximity to her was both intimate and controversial. Their bond, marked by an emotional intensity that seemed to transcend mere friendship, was complicated by the ominous death of Dudley's wife, a demise that set tongues wagging within noble circles, raising eyebrows at the splendid union of love and power. As time progressed, the advent of a younger suitor, the Earl of Essex, brought forth fresh layers of complexity to her personal narrative. Their impassioned correspondence was charged with an intensity that echoed the delicate strategies of political maneuvering, illustrating how Elizabeth adroitly navigated the treacherous waters of courtly affection. The absence of a formal marriage did little to quell public fascination. Rather, it amplified the discourse surrounding her personal allegiance, casting her in a light of both intrigue and political astuteness. Indeed, in an epoch where a woman's societal value was inextricably linked to her marital status, Elizabeth I astutely transformed her perceived solitude into a source of formidable influence. While her virginity became the subject of myth and speculation, it served as a pivotal tool in her governance, empowering her to wield singlehood as an emblem of sovereignty. Ironically, as her cousin Mary Stuart faced her tumultuous downfall and Catherine Howard's shadow loomed in the annals of history, Elizabeth's narrative remains a testament to the nuanced dynamics of power, identity, and the complexities inherent in her reign. Catherine Howard, a mere adolescent when she captivated the attention of King Henry VIII, emerged into a tumultuous court where the remnants of two queens lingered ominously in the background. Infused with vivacity and charm, Catherine's fate was inexorably sealed by the very qualities that initially drew the king to her. Her youthful indiscretions and flirtations, though common among her peers, were thrust into the harsh light of royal scrutiny, redefined as acts of treason. The debate among historians continues. Was her involvement with the king an act of seduction or a desperate quest for survival? What remains indisputable is her tragic trajectory. Accused of impropriety both before and after her marriage, she endured relentless interrogation, betrayal, and ultimately, abandonment. Her execution was not merely tragic in its finality but emblematic of a broader irony. Catherine was condemned for her youth in a court rife with predation of the innocent. Thrust into a relationship with a monarch known for disposing of his wives like political pawns, she made the grievous error of believing she could afford any missteps. In a fickle court where the tides of favour ebbed and flowed, Catherine's brief legacy persisted long enough for another figure, Mary Boleyn, to emerge from the shadows, highlighting the ever-present thread of irony woven through the histories of Henry VIII's queens. Mary Boleyn occupies a unique position within the intricacies of Tudor history, often overshadowed by her formidable sister, and, while Anne's ascent reshaped the contours of the English monarchy, it was Mary who initially captivated King Henry VIII in a liaison that, while not scandalous enough to disrupt the fabric of her marriage, still bore the hallmarks of royal intrigue. Her romance with Henry unfolded amidst a tapestry of courtly politics, existing in a sphere that was both clandestine yet conspicuously public, carrying with it a blend of fascination and danger. The complications intensified when her children began to show physical traits reminiscent of the king, prompting a whirlwind of speculation and scandal that questioned their legitimacy. The whispers of court were relentless. Were these children potential claimants to the throne? The ambiguity surrounding their paternity became a tantalizing enigma, left unresolved in the annals of history, heightening Mary's allure within the royal narrative. After Anne's dramatic rise and fall, her fate a profound lesson on the perils of ambition and desire. Mary withdrew from the turbulent court life that had once enveloped her. She chose to remarry in a manner that was uncharacteristically humble for her lineage, retreating into a semblance of exile where the echoes of her past lingered. Yet, even in her absence from the public sphere, Mary remained a potent symbol within the royal gossip, embodying the complexities of women in her age who navigated the treacherous waters of power, desire, and legacy. Her life serves as a compelling reminder that even those with less ambition left indelible marks upon the pages of history, their secrets entwined with the fabric of the Tudor dynasty, complex, haunting, and ultimately unresolved. Prince George, the Duke of Kent, embodied a complex blend of allure and enigma during the early 20th century. With an undeniable charm and an effortless style, he navigated the sophisticated landscape of his era in search of hedonistic pleasures. His associations were eclectic, ranging from actresses to singers, and, according to rumors, potentially included men, which added a layer of intrigue to his already colorful persona. Viewed as a destabilizing force within the royal family, his propensity for scandal and his penchant for flirtation created palpable tension within the regal confines of Buckingham Palace. Speculation surrounded him. Rumors circulated of love affairs, chaotic friendships, and enigmatic correspondence, sparking tales of illegitimate offspring and connections to unsavory characters that the monarchy would rather forget. The tragic circumstances of his untimely death in a plane crash only intensified the intrigue. While officially classified as an accident, it became fertile ground for conspiracy theories. His sudden demise did not extinguish the rumors. Instead, it amplified questions regarding the secrets he may have harbored and the individuals with whom he mingled. Despite the royal family's efforts to bury his legacy, the intrigue surrounding Prince George persists, keeping his story alive in the annals of royal history. Princess Margaret, Countess of Snowdon, emerged in a historical context where her very existence served as a contradiction to the expectations of royal decorum. Born on the cusp of a new era, she epitomized the tension between personal liberation and public duty. As the younger sister of Queen Elizabeth II, Margaret's striking beauty was complemented by a daring disposition. She was often seen enjoying long cigarettes and donning elegant Dior designs even during daylight hours. However, it was her tumultuous romantic entanglements that captured the attention of both the public and the press, particularly the passionate affair with Peter Townsend, a divorced man whose mere presence presented a direct challenge to her royal obligations. The choice between love and the monarchy, ultimately made in favor of duty, left an indelible mark on Margaret's psyche, fostering a lingering sense of resentment toward the very institution she upheld. Throughout her life, multiple affairs ensued, some shrouded in secrecy while others became tabloid fodder, contributing to a public persona framed by scandal. Her marriage to photographer Anthony Armstrong Jones became a tableau of tension, illustrating the pervasive themes of infidelity and the allure of royal glamour. While friends perceived her as a wounded soul, the media vilified her as wild and reckless. Yet, Margaret embodied a rare blend of personality and rebellion that defied contemporary royal norms. With each enigmatic smile and cigarette lit that drew attention, she subverted the archetype of the ideal royal woman, revealing layers of complexity beneath her polished exterior. However, as the waves of public fascination waned, the spectre of her uncle Edward VII served as a haunting reminder of the persistent shadow of royal legacy and the burdens it imposed on those who dared to step outside its stringent confines. Prince Edward, the Duke of Windsor, Edward VII, chose love over the throne, yet the implications of that love sparked widespread scrutiny. His infatuation with Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee, disregarded royal decorum and posed a significant challenge to monarchy norms. Instead of a romantic saga, their relationship evolved into a source of political strife, intertwining personal choices with national consequences. Despite the whispers of dissent surrounding him, Edward showcased Wallis at royal events long before it was socially acceptable, deliberately flouting warnings and parliamentary counsel. His abdication was not just an act of passion, it was a profound sacrifice that dismantled not only royal tradition but also the stability of the British monarchy. Even prior to Wallis, Edward was already embroiled in a web of scandal, known for his volatile emotions and connections to high society that often raised eyebrows. In the aftermath of his abdication, the couple mingled with a cast of characters that included fascists and exiles, creating associations that kept British intelligence on high alert. The infamy surrounding Edward's abdication was not merely about his affection for Wallis but also about the destructive lengths to which he was willing to go, sacrificing familial bonds, national stability, and his own legacy for love. Remarkably, he was not alone in experiencing the tumult of a marriage that unraveled under the weight of royal expectations. Queen Caroline of Brunswick occupies a complex and tumultuous chapter in the annals of British royal history, characterized by a marriage to George IV that was orchestrated for political alliances yet marred by deep personal animosity. The king's disdain for Caroline was so profound that it manifested itself in public policy and societal discourse. Their union, brief and rife with dysfunction, set the stage for a series of accusations that painted Caroline as a figure of controversy. Much of this stemmed from her refusal to endure public humiliation quietly, resulting in allegations ranging from infidelity to improper conduct. Following their separation, Caroline's exile led her to traverse Europe, accompanied by an eclectic assembly of performers and enigmatic companions, an entourage that fueled salacious speculation in the British press. George IV's attempt to dissolve their marriage culminated in a parliamentary trial that resembled a sensationalized tabloid spectacle rather than a legitimate judicial inquiry, where witnesses painted her in a scandalous light. Satirists seized upon her story, depicting her as a monarch epitomizing extravagance. Interestingly, public sympathy gradually tilted toward Caroline, not out of a belief in her innocence but largely due to their preference for her over the king. This shift illustrated a collective sentiment that spoke more to the citizens' distaste for George IV than to Caroline's actual character. Her attempt to attend his coronation ended violently, as she was physically barred from the proceedings. She passed away shortly thereafter, yet her legacy endured beyond her death, symbolizing a persistent narrative of royal turmoil, feminine resistance, and a relentless scandal that defied attempts at suppression. 16. Lady Caroline Lamb may not have held a royal title, yet her life became inextricably intertwined with the grand narratives of 19th-century high society, which often thrived on scandal. Upon marrying into the aristocracy, she found herself at the epicenter of a tumultuous social scene, marked notably by her tumultuous affair with the infamous Lord Byron. This liaison was not merely a romantic endeavor. It unfolded as a dramatic spectacle characterized by obsession and unabashed public scrutiny. Lamb herself encapsulated Byron's allure and danger when she labeled him mad, bad, and dangerous to know, a description that could just as easily have been applied to her conduct. When their affair concluded, her painful pursuit of him took on a bizarre and unsettling twist, exemplified by her bizarre act of sending him her pubic hair through the mail, a gesture so shocking it reverberated through Regency society. Her penchant for theatricality continued when she arrived at a gathering in a page boy costume, only to subsequently inflict harm upon herself in front of astonished onlookers. The reactions to her antics oscillated from scandal to intrigue and back again, reflecting the deep contradictions within her character. Lamb's behavior transcended mere erraticism. It challenged the unspoken rules that governed women's lives and emotions during her time. She was a figure whose loudness, sensuality, and evident pain rendered her both tragic and cautionary. In her story lies a poignant reflection on the societal expectations of femininity, a narrative that even caught the attention of those maintaining their own lists of notable women throughout history. Catherine Parr has earned her place in history primarily as the final wife of Henry VIII, often referred to as the survivor, given that she outlived him. Yet, her narrative extends far beyond mere royalty. It is a tale interwoven with personal complexities and emotional tumult long before she became the Queen's consort. As a twice-widowed woman, she possessed an intellect and devotion to faith coupled with an ardent romantic nature, attributes that proved perilous in the volatile landscape of Tudor England. At the time of her betrothal to Henry, her heart was still tethered to Thomas Seymour, the brother of the deceased Queen Jane Seymour. Their letters are imbued with raw emotion and an intensity that hints at a profound connection, revealing a love laden with longing and secrecy. Despite these deeply felt attachments, Catherine wed Henry VIII, driven perhaps by a sense of obligation or a desire for security amid the unpredictable court politics. However, following Henry's demise, she did not hesitate to rekindle her romance with Seymour, a bold decision that sent ripples through the royal court and shocked the establishment. Their marriage was characterized by fervent passion but also instability, ultimately spiraling into destruction. The relationship became mired in scandal, particularly concerning Seymour's alleged inappropriate behavior toward Catherine's stepdaughter, the future Queen Elizabeth I. As her final days approached, Catherine was engulfed by a maelstrom of anxiety and jealousy, encapsulating the turmoil of her existence. Tragically, she passed away during childbirth, her life a poignant narrative marked by unanswered questions and unresolved passions, leaving behind a collection of poignant letters that serve as a testament to her richly embroidered, albeit tumultuous, journey through history. Queen Isabella of Angoulême emerged in the early 13th century as a figure embodying both stunning beauty and considerable controversy. Married at a tender age of 12 to King John, her entrance into the tumultuous realm of royalty came long before she could fully grasp its complexities. Chroniclers of the time painted her as a person whose allure and charm wielded a significant, albeit precarious, influence, one that belied her youth. Following King John's death, her narrative took on an even more captivating dimension. As Queen Dowager, Isabella returned to her native France, where she reportedly engaged in affairs with several lovers, many of whom were younger knights sworn to uphold her safety. The implications of her actions stretched far beyond mere gossip. They were documented in court records, condemned by the Church, and reflected in the ire of political adversaries. The discourse surrounding Isabella raises vital questions. Was she truly a figure of sexual promiscuity, or rather a woman exercising the agency that her status granted her? Consensus was elusive. Yet her notoriety stemmed not solely from her affairs, but from her striking refusal to conceal them. She was unreserved, defiant, and, perhaps most scandalously, a pawn of political usefulness to no one. This defiance ultimately shaped her legacy, illustrating the complex intersection of gender, power, and autonomy in a period characterized by rigid expectations and societal norms. Henrietta Maria of France embodies the complexities of royal existence during a tumultuous time in English history. Married to King Charles I, she found herself positioned in a deeply Protestant society that often viewed her Catholic faith with suspicion. Her foreign origins compounded her challenges in navigating a court that prioritized restraint and decorum, marking her as an outsider in a realm rife with xenophobia. Henrietta Maria's affinity for her French entourage, particularly her male courtiers, elicited relentless scrutiny and rumor. Detractors painted her as a manipulative figure who wielded influence over the king not through political acumen, but by fostering intimate relationships. Public perception branded her a potentially perilous seductress, allegedly leading Charles astray both spiritually and sensually. Artistic representations further complicated her image, depicting her resplendent in luxurious fabrics, directing a gaze at Charles that oscillated between warmth and intensity. Critics interpreted this connection as a form of emotional coercion, framing her emotional engagement as a calculated strategy for dominance. When the English Civil War erupted, Henrietta Maria sought refuge away from the conflict, yet her legacy endured, immortalized in pamphlets, whispered discourse within Parliament, and sermonized denunciations. Despite possessing limited formal authority, she indelibly influenced the narrative of the monarchy. Her departure from the political stage paved the way for another figure, equally dramatic, who would continue to captivate and challenge societal norms. Nell Gwyn, a figure who emerged from the humblest beginnings, transformed her identity from an orange seller in a theatre to the cherished mistress of King Charles II. Her ascent to prominence was not predicated on noble lineage or decorum, but rather on her vibrant personality and keen sense of humour. With a lively Cockney accent, she captivated audiences and even the king himself, often employing her wit to poke fun at the aristocracy that surrounded her. Gwyn embraced the persona of the scandalous woman, a departure from the pretense of virtue that characterized many of her contemporaries. This audacity allowed her to forge her own space within the court, as demonstrated by her infamous retort to a misconception about her religion. "I'm the Protestant whore," a statement that redefined insult as an emblem of her identity. Despite bearing 2 sons for Charles II and receiving lavish rewards, including a residence, a pension, and widespread public adoration, her position remained tenuous. The enjoyment she brought to the court was the cornerstone of her acceptance, yet it was this same reliance on her entertainment value that rendered her vulnerable. Beneath the surface of jocular banter lay an unsettling reality. She was only secure as long as she continued to amuse. Meanwhile, shadows loomed in the form of more shrewd rivals, waiting for opportunities to usurp her place in the king's affections. Thus, Gwyn's legacy is one of triumph marred by the uncertainties of her chosen path, a testament to the unpredictable nature of love and power in the royal court. Barbara Villiers, Duchess of Cleveland, occupies a formidable space in the annals of royal history, serving not merely as a lover to King Charles II but as a significant political force in her own right. Tall and commanding, Villiers captured the king's affections with a swift and undeniable grasp, eclipsing other aspirants at court during a period rife with competition. Her 5 children with Charles, along with the titles and lands she accrued, positioned her at the center of political maneuvering that extended beyond mere personal connections to encompass vital court appointments and military roles. Yet, it was not solely Barbara's political acumen that stirred controversy. It was her audacity that truly set her apart. Affairs, rather than being concealed, were boldly displayed. She navigated the dangerous waters of court politics with an unyielding confidence, openly flaunting her lovers and deriding her competitors with the deftness of a seasoned strategist. Known for her legendary beauty, she was equally infamous for her fiery temper. Even when Charles endeavored to distance himself from her, she returned with a more captivating and dramatic presence. Ultimately, Villiers' legacy transcends romantic entanglements, reflecting a complicated understanding of power and agency. She grasped the nuanced reality that scandal could be maneuvered into a concept of loyalty, a strategy that many contemporaries failed to comprehend. However, as the vibrancy of her influence began to diminish, an ominous figure began to emerge from the shadows, a presence more subdued yet far more perilous, heralding an era marked by unsettling rumors and a darker political landscape. Her story, thus, serves as a compelling examination of ambition, scandal, and the multifaceted nature of loyalty within the corridors of power. Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence, occupied the noteworthy position of second in line to the British throne, but paradoxically found himself ensnared in public skepticism. Affectionately referred to as Eddie among his acquaintances, he appeared to grapple with his royal identity, exuding a charisma in portraits yet often revealing a disconsolate awkwardness in social interactions. His life was marred by persistent rumors, ranging from alleged homosexual relationships to wild accusations linking him to the notorious Whitechapel murders. Although such theories have since been discredited, they maintain a peculiar allure in the annals of history. Eddie's name was often entangled with scandalous whispers regarding brothels and societal moral crises, where the lines between reality and fiction became alarmingly blurred. The royal family, keen to quell these disturbances, resorted to managing public perception through meticulously curated appearances and deliberate silence. However, following his untimely death before his anticipated union with Princess Mary, the inquiries surrounding his life only intensified rather than subsiding. His unexpected passing, coupled with a life that felt partly unrealized, has led to a legacy that remains enigmatic. Subsequently, the monarchy effectively silenced discussion of his troubled existence. Yet intriguingly, decades later, a scandal ignited through the actions of a distant cousin would prove to be inescapable, creating a vortex of intrigue that no public relations strategy could manage. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, has emerged as a figure enmeshed in controversy, his misdeeds threatening to overshadow the British monarchy itself. Once dubbed the Playboy Prince by the tabloid press, his charisma has deteriorated into a less appealing image, marked by associations with embroiled billionaires and increasingly peculiar public appearances. His attempts at image rehabilitation have often backfired, transforming speculative murmurs into sensational headlines. Central to this tumult is not merely the nature of his actions, but rather his chilling indifference to the ensuing fallout. As scrutiny intensified, the palace's reticence became palpably evident, setting the stage for a protracted public relations crisis. The fallout was swift and severe. Royal titles revoked, official obligations rescinded, and a man who once basked in the limelight now receding into obscurity, seemingly oblivious to his diminishing prominence. Unlike the royal scandals of earlier eras, which could be obscured within historical accounts or worn portraits, this scandal flourished in the age of digital immediacy, relentlessly chronicled by cameras and social media. For the first time in its storied past, a monarchy adept at weathering myriad storms was confronted with a daunting question. Was one of its own worth the sacrifices necessary for institutional survival? King William III, known as William of Orange, was a figure driven more by practical concerns than by romantic notions. His invasion of his father-in-law's realm was marked not by the passion of a romantic hero, but by a calculated approach to governance that prioritized strategic advantage over sentimentality. Despite his pragmatic demeanor, rumors circulated regarding his close bonds with male courtiers, particularly William Bentinck and later Arnold van Kiel. These relationships were characterized by a certain intensity that raised eyebrows and sparked controversy across Europe. The king bestowed titles, gifts, and influential positions upon these men, provoking criticism that transcended mere gossip. Pamphlets and publications of the time accused him of exhibiting unnatural preferences and fostering dangerous foreign influences, casting a shadow over his reign. William, however, remained largely indifferent to these accusations, focusing instead on the critical task of safeguarding a Protestant monarchy facing serious threats. Yet, the persistent rumors clung to him, akin to smoke that refuses to dissipate from fabric. Today, historians grapple with the complexities of his relationships, pondering whether these were mere friendships, expressions of favoritism, or perhaps something more profound. The intricacies of these connections remain enshrined within unsent letters and unspoken silences, echoing the enigmatic nature of a king who, like his predecessors, faced the scrutiny of a society eager to unravel the truth behind the facades of power and companionship. King James I of England and VI of Scotland stands as a pivotal figure in the history of both nations, effectively merging them and navigating through numerous schemes against him while orchestrating the translation of the Bible that bears his name. However, the court's chatter often fixated not on his political maneuvers, but rather on the peculiar intimacy he displayed towards favored courtiers. James cultivated bonds with male favorites, promoting them despite their lack of qualifications, relationships steeped in affection, and correspondence echoing the sweet tones of 17th century romance. Among these men were Robert Carr and George Villiers, both strikingly handsome and politically ambitious, whose swift rise caused considerable strife within the court and bred public skepticism. James's affectionate allusions to Villiers as "my sweet child and wife" left much to be desired in terms of royal public relations. Were these merely extravagant phrases? Perhaps. Nevertheless, they had tangible political ramifications, fostering factionalism, envy, and a reign increasingly influenced by figures close to his affections or vanity. Although James asserted the divine right to rule, speculation about his earthly decisions persisted. He was not the initial monarch to elevate a favorite, yet he perhaps transformed the dynamic into something resembling a complex love triangle entwined with the burdens of royalty. Princess Louise, the Duchess of Argyll, emerges from the legacy of Queen Victoria not merely as a figure defined by her physical allure, but as a complex character trapped within the intricacies of royal expectations. An embodiment of artistic spirit and intellectual vigor, she often resisted the prescribed behavior of royalty, leading to a life marked not only by her innate talents but by her fervent restlessness. Around her, swirling rumors depicted a life rich in intrigue. Whispers of romantic dalliances with sculptors and tutors, and even clandestine affairs with her married art instructor permeated the halls of the palace. The speculation surrounding her behavior gave rise to a particularly scandalous conjecture that Louise bore a child in secret, with the infant quietly placed for adoption to safeguard the royal family's reputation. While there exists no definitive evidence to confirm such claims, the historical record is marred by inconsistencies, unexplained absences, abrupt relocations, and a conspicuous absence of documentation. What emerges from these obscurities is a portrait of a woman who was unapologetically untraditional and often relegated to the peripheries of royal life, where the weight of expectation bore heavily upon her. Her marriage to the Marquis of Lorne was characterized as both formal and strained, often depicted by contemporaries as devoid of affection. Yet, within this solitude, Louise maintained an air of quiet defiance, eschewing the notion of vanishing into the shadows of the monarchy. She sought not to scandalize the institution of royalty, but rather to assert her individuality in a world that expected compliance, mirroring the struggles of her formidable mother, Queen Victoria, in her own complex relationship with the crown. Thus, Princess Louise remains an intriguing figure, representing the tensions between personal desire and public duty that defined an era. Queen Victoria is often heralded as the emblematic matriarch of the British Empire, representing an era defined by decorum and restraint. Yet, in the private realm of her life, this facade of composure crumbled under the weight of her intense emotions. Her profound affection for Prince Albert bordered on obsession, as correspondence illustrates a woman grappling with overwhelming feelings of desire, jealousy, and profound emotional dependency. Following Albert's untimely death, Victoria's mourning transformed into a defining aspect of her identity, enveloping her in a profound sorrow. The complexities of her emotional landscape did not cease with Albert's passing. The relationship she formed thereafter invited considerable scrutiny. Notably, her bond with John Brown, a Scottish servant, and Abdul Karim, her Indian attendant, stirred the public imagination. Both men found themselves unexpectedly enmeshed in her personal sphere, raising questions about the nature of her affections and intentions. Accusations of exploitation permeated their involvement, casting them as figures of intrigue within the palace, while official denials and alterations of records sought to quell the rising speculation. Although Victoria presided over a period marked by strict moral standards, her private life revealed a disconcerting interplay between propriety and passion. Within the confines of her royal domain, the boundaries of acceptable behavior were frequently renegotiated, begging interpretations that eluded clarification for both contemporaries and historians alike. Thus, her reign encapsulates the tension between societal expectations and the inner workings of human affection, a duality that continues to provoke inquiry and debate. Princess Diana, the Princess of Wales, embodies a remarkable juxtaposition to her predecessors, particularly Queen Victoria, who famously concealed her emotions. In contrast, Diana openly shared her vulnerabilities with the world, transforming the archetype of the stoic royal into one of emotional honesty. This shift was starkly illustrated as she navigated the public unraveling of her marriage, a modern fairy tale turned tragedy, captivating global attention. The media, alongside historians, meticulously examine her relationships with figures such as James Hewitt, Hasnat Khan, and Dodi Fayed, each generating a swirl of theories, conspiracies, and timelines that spoke to Diana's complex interplay with the monarchy. Her romantic entanglements became not merely personal affairs but acts of defiance against a royal institution that had consistently marginalized her. Rather than retreating into silence, Diana confronted her plight head-on, forging a path through media scrutiny that often felt loaded with emotional landmines. She posed for photographs, granted candid interviews, and, in doing so, shattered the stoic facade of Buckingham Palace. Beneath the celebrity glitter, however, lay profound anguish. Her actions were not born of recklessness, but rather a response to a deep-seated hurt. The public consumed her heartbreak, transforming it into a spectacle all its own. Yet through this reclamation of her narrative, she significantly altered perceptions of royal womanhood. Curiously, despite the numerous romantic affairs that marked her life, it was not with a lover that Diana's most noteworthy relationship lay, but rather with a man, Prince Charles, who seemed perpetually preoccupied with the shadow of another. This dynamic underscores the intricate layers of her personal story, one fraught with longing, betrayal, and resilience, highlighting the ongoing struggle for agency within the confines of royal expectation. Diana's legacy stands as a testament to her enduring influence on the modern monarchy, characterized by authenticity amidst the rigidity of tradition. Prince Charles, now known as King Charles III, has had a life marked by intertwined love, duty, and public scrutiny. His marriage to Diana Spencer was overshadowed by his enduring affection for Camilla Parker Bowles, a fact he struggled to conceal from a watching nation. The intricate dynamics of his personal life played out across tabloids and broadcast news, with revelations that turned into fodder for late-night humor. For an extended period, Charles was cast as the antagonist within the modern fairy tale of a beloved princess. Yet, his romantic entanglements revealed a deeper narrative, one of incompatible aspirations rather than sheer betrayal. Entrusted with the heavy mantle of royal duty from birth, his heart craved the poetic connection that Camilla provided, in stark contrast to the more conventional role expected from Diana. The nuances of emotional resonance mattered little to the public, which held him captive to rigid traditional expectations that often eclipsed the truth of his feelings and experiences. As a result, his affair morphed into what many consider one of the most significant royal scandals of recent times. However, after enduring a span of turmoil, Charles ultimately wed Camilla, transforming his former mistress into his queen. Interestingly, His rehabilitation in the eyes of the public can be attributed, at least in part, to the overshadowing presence of another figure, one who is quieter, older, and steeped in the mythology of the British monarchy. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, is often remembered in her later years as the benevolent matriarch of Britain, characterized by her warm smile and stately demeanor adorned with soft pastel hats. Yet, this image only partially captures the complexities of her early life as Elizabeth Beauce-Lyon, as she navigated the upper echelons of society with an intriguing presence that transcended mere convention. Her allure was not rooted in scandal per se, but rather in a multitude of emotional intricacies that left lingering questions regarding her connections with notable figures of her time. Among the most persistent of these were whispers of a profound relationship with a married nobleman, a bond so intense that admitting its reality might fundamentally alter her public persona. Moreover, accounts suggest that Elizabeth turned down Prince Albert's hand multiple times, a decision that could point to deeper affections elsewhere. Publicly portrayed as a virtuous figure who brought warmth to the royal family, the nuances of her private life reveal a different story, fraught with uncertainty and silence. This silence is compounded by missing correspondence and hesitant confidants, suggesting a narrative shaped by the monarchy's desire to project a flawless image. Thus, while she may have been celebrated as the embodiment of royal grace, the complexities of her identity challenge the simplistic labels affixed to her, hinting that the legend of Elizabeth I is intertwined with deeper, perhaps more tumultuous undercurrents than history has traditionally acknowledged. Richard the Lionheart stands as a towering figure in history, heralded as a crusading hero and a medieval warrior archetype, brandishing his sword with an aura of divine endorsement. Yet, the persona constructed throughout the centuries belies a more intricate reality, one shrouded in a multitude of whispers. His prolonged unmarried state and the emotionally charged ties he fostered with male companions have incited incessant speculation among observers. Chroniclers tread lightly around the subject, and subsequent historians grappled with the implications of these relationships. The deep connection he shared with King Philip II of France has been articulated in strikingly poetic terms, often straddling the divide between formal diplomacy and intimate affection. Their bond was such that they reportedly shared a bed, a practice not uncommon among royals engaged in political alliances but still enough to stir controversy at the time. Richard's eventual marriage to Berengaria of Navarre, marred by scant evidence of a genuine marital existence, further complicates the public's understanding of his character and relationships. While his legacy as a gallant leader overshadows other aspects of his life, the enigma of his private affairs raises questions that prompt reflection. Was he a victim of misunderstanding, a figure misrepresented by historians, or simply a personality dulled by the passage of time? The subsequent ruler lacked Richard's compelling mystique, though he certainly inherited his formidable reputation for intimidation. King John stands in stark contrast to the celebrated legacy of his predecessor, Richard. Where Richard embodies the romanticized vision of knighthood and valor, John's reign serves as a stern warning of the perils of unchecked power. His portrayal in historical records is unflattering, highlighting a ruler characterized by lasciviousness, oppressive governance, and profound personal shortcomings. Chroniclers have depicted him as an aggressor toward noble women, persistently harassing their families and fostering a web of coerced affiliations that blurred the lines between majestic entitlement and blatant exploitation. His court was often described as steeped in moral decay, ruled by fear rather than affection, fundamentally altering the nature of courtly relationships. Disturbing accounts assert that he imprisoned women who rebuffed his advances and wielded his authority to dismantle the reputations of his adversaries by targeting their female relatives. While the veracity of these accounts may be debated, their recurrent themes illustrate a monarch whose insatiable desires rendered him loathsome to both the populace and the nobility. The Magna Carta emerged not merely as a political instrument, but as a crucial attempt to curtail a sovereign whose personal conduct spiraled into a national calamity. Yet, even King John's infamous reign pales in comparison to the tumultuous events that would follow. Edward II of England remains a figure shrouded in infamy, with few monarchs drawing as much scornful verse as he did. His rule, bereft of military triumphs and plagued by political instability, is often remembered for an overt favoritism that enraged the aristocracy. Central to this narrative was Piers Gaveston, Edward's close confidant, whose extraordinary elevation to power included lavish titles and estates. This blatant preferential treatment drew the ire of noble peers and inspired a torrent of European mockery, often laced with thinly veiled warnings. Following Gaveston's execution, Edward's reliance on another favourite, Hugh Despenser, only intensified the backlash against him. Chronicles of the era depict Despenser's unbridled ambition, amassing wealth at the expense of the crown's dignity while affronting Isabella, Edward's queen. Ultimately, Isabella's allegiance to the rebellion against her husband could be interpreted as both a reaction to political disenchantment and personal indignation. Edward's dramatic decline culminated in imprisonment, resulting in a legacy marred by critiques that attribute his fall as much to the intensity of his personal passions as to his policy failures. His reign compelled a nation to grapple with an unsettling dilemma. At what point does a king's private life begin to undermine the very institution he represents?